Well, hello, ruckus makers. Today I'm joined by a new friend, Kirsten Durward, who was born in Scotland and raised around the world. Kirsten is a truly global thinker. Her educational training spans Scotland, USA, Australia, and more. After 27 years of international education experience across 7 countries and leadership positions in 5 schools, she now works as an independent consultant, creating individually tailored professional development for schools, developing online learning events, which we're going to talk more about, and coaching educators. Kirsten founded also one of the most popular educator PLNs on Facebook with 120,000 global educators where they share resources, support, inspire one another. It's called the Global Educator Collective, and we'll link that up for you in the show notes. And you can connect with Kirsten on Twitter at Learner Focused. Kirsten, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Daniel. I'm so excited to be here with you. And it's really just awesome what you're doing, getting school leaders connected across the world and learning from one another through your wonderful podcast. So thanks for having me.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's great to have you. And like I said, we're here to talk about a really amazing opportunity for ruckus makers and educators. There's a thing called the School Leadership Boot Camp, and that's on March 3rd and 4th. Can you tell us what that event is all about?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been curating online events for a while now with a company in India called Toddle Education, and Toddle builds learning management systems for schools that are really awesome. They're awesome. They're visual. They're so easy to use. They're really inviting, and they make sense. And I got involved with them about 4.5 years ago when they contacted me to look at their very first learning management system and give them some advice.
Mm.
And then during the pandemic, when their business came to a halt, they said, what can we do? So we came up with this idea for a virtual event, which was the very first Inquiry Educators Summit in 2020. And we put that
Mm.
together in literally 6 weeks, with educators across the world. And it was so popular. And we really thought, hey, there's an opportunity here to do something and bring people together. And it's free. Anybody can jump on it. So it doesn't matter whether you're in a rural school in India or you're in the Western Academy of Beijing, one of the top schools in the world with all the lucrative resources that you have. Everybody can network, everybody can learn. So we've done this a few times now. This is the first leadership one. We said, let's do something leadership specific. So I've been researching since March. I came across a really great publication by the Educational Development Trust about successful school leadership,
Mm-hmm.
which summarized global research on educational leadership. And one of the researches was transformational leadership, and it fell into 4 domains, which was set directions, build relationships, develop the organization, and improve instructional practices. So we have conceived the event around those 4 domains, but with the theme, unleash your leadership potential. So the intention really is for school leaders to come on. They can come on. There's a structured sessions in each time zone. So you can come on your time zone and stay on for 6 hours over 2 days and really do some deep digging. Or you can come on for one session, one keynote, or come on for one masterclass. That we'll talk about your masterclass a little bit later, Dan, which is 2 sessions over 2 days, or just come
Right.
on and network with other school leaders. There's so much opportunity.
It really is an incredible opportunity. In the domains, again, setting direction, building relationships, develop organization, improving instructional practices. Those are all solid things that leaders need to be thinking about. And I love the theme too, unleashing your leadership potential. My best-selling book, Mastermind, the subtitle is Unlocking Your Leadership Potential, right? And I know that any leader worth his or her salt, they have aspirations, they have dreams, visions, big goals that they're working toward. And so I think I know that will connect with ruckus makers. And so, yeah, that's happening March 3rd and 4th. Again, it's called School Leadership Boot Camp. And just so you know, you can go to betterleadersbetterschools.com/SLB. And we're going to have there for you a link that redirects people to the sign up page. You could Google to the School Leadership Bootcamp, and that's all going to work for you. And it's just going to be a great event. So, who are some of those speakers? There's a pretty cool lineup that you have planned. But who are some of those speakers or sessions that you are really excited about, Kirsten?
Oh, it's just such, for me, it's such a great opportunity to connect with idea people across the world, but also school leaders in schools. So, of course, Seth Godin, who is just the nicest person, and I can't believe how quickly he responds to emails. He does everything himself. He doesn't have an assistant. It's hyper impressive. So he's coming on, and he's talking about stop stealing dreams, which just to me is like, I just think education, sometimes the way the systems are, it squashes not just the kids but the teachers and everything. So he's coming on to talk about stop stealing dreams. And then we've got a wonderful lady called Anjali Sharma, and she actually works with institutions across the world on storytelling, how to tell your institutional story. So she's curated a keynote specifically for this event for the school leaders, how to tell your story, or how to tell the story of your school, how to dig deep and know what really drives you, and how to put that together so that other people can hear it. And this is something I just love, because I think there's so many people who they know who they are, but they just don't know how to put themselves across, So I'm really excited about that one. And then we have this amazing lady in Australia, Holly Ransom. She's a former Olympian. She's really making noise. You'd probably get on really well, because she's a total ruckus maker. She's really dynamic.
Love it.
She's out there in Australia. She's probably going to end up, being some kind of politician, but she's just out there making noise. And one of the things she's making noises about right now is education. And she's got a site called Epic, and she does epic challenges for leadership, and she brings leaderships from all industries together, which I think is super interesting, so that when you're on the challenge, you're teamed up with people from different industries, so you can all learn from one another as you're addressing these challenges. So I think those are my top keynotes. But to be honest with you, I'm most excited about the school case studies.
Yeah, well, tell us about those. Well, actually, let's get to the case studies in a second. I want to make a connection really quick. So Seth Godin, Stop Stealing Dreams. There's a TED Talk around that topic, and he has a free book on it as well. I don't know if you're aware of that or not, but it's an ebook you can download from his site, which I did. I downloaded it, I read it cover to cover, and at the end, I believe he challenges the reader, at least I remember this, he challenged me, the reader, to basically improve on the idea, or tell a story that was in a similar vein, but in your own perspective, right? So you may or may not know this, but my first book, The Better Leaders, Better Schools Roadmap, was actually my attempt at doing Stop Stealing Dreams, but in my own way, right? And I sent him a copy. I sent him a copy of all my books, and I've been through all his programs, Kirsten. I've been a part of the Alt MBA too. I've coached for the Alt MBA, so he's certainly somebody I look up to as a hero and mentor, and he's influenced my thinking profoundly. And then the last connection, this whole Ruckus Maker brand, right? It's from Seth. Seth's always saying, "Go make a ruckus." That's where I got it from, and that's why that's why I'm out here. Just, hey, we need to innovate. We need to challenge the status quo. We need to make education better, right, and more modern, and this kind of stuff. And so, yeah, that's a pretty cool connection. Can't wait to hear his talk. All right, so case studies. Let's hear about those school case studies.
Well, we've got so many. We've got 12. We have 2 each day in each time zone. So we have 4 in your USA time zone, and then 4 in the GMT time zone, and then 4 in the Southeast Asia time zone. There's so many diverse stories. It's almost hard to just pick 1 or 2. But Ian Fish, who's the school head at IS Luxembourg, he's coming on to talk about how his school is addressing DEIJ. And it's a really fabulous presentation about how they engage the whole community, how they came up not just with a plan, but a logo. And all of the case studies reflect on how the leaders planned the initiative, how they got everybody involved in the initiative, how they rolled it out, and then reflect on what's going on. And the common thread amongst them all is that it's always an ongoing story. So whereas you do move on to another target, you're always kind of quietly developing this. We've got Anita Churchill. She's amazing. She's something that the school doesn't have very often, which is a leader for gifted and talented. And her whole background is high ability, gifted and talented. So she's giving structure for how to implement a high ability, gifted and talented program in a school. And she's giving some of her resources on that. And we've got people talking about how to develop a school with the community. We've got people talking about how to develop a teacher growth program. And another one of my favorites, Brenda's a school leader in Nashville, Tennessee, which just really tickles my tonsils just to say that. Nashville, Tennessee. She's a school leader there in a public school. And this lady is dynamic. She's inspiring. She's got the biggest heart. And what she has put forward is how to deal with, how to be responsive to trauma, and how that is something that we really need to have on our agenda now with schools across the world, due to pandemic, due to other things, due to your unfortunate situation in the US with school shootings and other pressures, but that we really need to be informed, and we really need to have strategies so that we understand how to get through the traumas in order to get back to the learning. And just ignoring them is not working. And I haven't seen the details of her presentation yet, but it's honestly one of the ones that I think is going to be the most relevant to our time now. And I think it's one that school leaders are really going to be interested to talk about.
Yeah, those all sound wonderful, and I'm excited, to participate. And just to connect on the story, so case studies are a story in themselves. I heard you mention one of the keynote speakers is talking about telling your school or organization story, and it sounds like one of the case studies was about storytelling as well. And this, I can't emphasize enough how important it is for the ruckus maker watching or listening. You control the narrative. And if you don't put a story out there, somebody else is going to make up the story for you, right? And so it's like, do you do you want to be proactive, or do you want to just see like what people start to say? And so that's a really important piece. And then how to tell stories, right, with emotion and vivid imagery and this kind of stuff, so that it lands. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of great practical advice on how to do that. So very, very cool. I think with you want to add
can
something?
I just jump
Go ahead.
in for a minute? Yeah,
Please,
no, because
please.
I so agree with that, Danny. Like, I really do agree with it, because I think it's how we show our hearts, it's how we show our spirits, it's how we really embrace. This is something that, through age comes wisdom. We know that, right? And I got to a
Yeah.
point when I hit 50, and I was working in a school in Bangkok at the time. And I said, I have always been quite strong in education. And when I go to hiring, when I'm being hired, I always say to them, don't hire me if you don't buy into what I'm saying, because I'm not answering questions here. I'm not trying to get myself a job. I am actually saying this is what I do. And so I've always been like that. And sometimes it's a bit disappointing when you go in and you work with other leaders and you realize they just wanted to hire you because you had this qualification or you could do this thing, and they weren't really on the same bandwagon as you in terms of what you wanted to achieve in education. But when I hit 50, like, it was like a switch flicked, and I just said, that's it. I'm not playing Mrs. Nice anymore. I'm really saying this is what's important. This is what's important. Because if we don't stand up, if we don't put our head above the parapet, and then we don't find the other people like us, we can't band together. And this, to me, is what my community groups are all about. It's like, we have found
Right.
people who want it, and suddenly, we've got 8,000 people in a leadership group, or we've got 100,000 teachers across the world who are all saying, actually, we do want to talk about these things, and we do want to bring them up. And it means for that one person in that one school where they're the only person like that, they have a group too. So your ruckus making, Danny, is important, but your ruckus making of your ruckus maters is even more important, because they will go on and they will inspire other people to be brave. And that just brings me back to thinking about what Brené Brown says about brave leadership. It's not just about fighting for our school and our thing. It's actually about embracing our truth and saying, this is actually what I need to say.
Right. Absolutely. Well, thanks for sharing that, Kirsten. We're going to pause here. I'm enjoying our conversation, but we're going to get in some messages from our sponsors. And when we get back, I do want to ask, like, how the heck did you find out about me? All right. Learn how to successfully navigate change, shape your school's success, and empower your teams with Harvard's certificate in school management and leadership. Get online professional development that fits your schedule. Courses include leading change, leading school strategy and innovation, leading people, and leading learning. You can apply today at betterleadersbetterschools.com/Harvard. School leaders know that productive self-talk drives student learning, but the average teacher talks 75% of the class time. Give your students more opportunities to learn in class by monitoring their talk time. Check out TeachFX for yourself. You can go over to teachfx.com/BLBS to learn more about our special partnership for Ruckus Makers. And today's show is proudly sponsored by Organized Binder, a program which gives students daily exposure to goal setting, reflective learning, time and task management, study strategies, organizational skills, and more. Organized Binder's color-coded system is implemented by the teacher through parallel process with the students, helping them create a predictable and dependable classroom routine. You can learn more and improve your students' executive functioning at organizedbinder.com. And we are back with the Ruckus Maker, Kirsten Durward, and she is here to talk about the School Leadership Bootcamp. When this podcast goes live, the link will be betterleadersbetterschools.com/SLB. But if you're watching the video portion of our conversation, go to the link that is on the screen. Okay, Kirsten, I have to ask, how did we get connected? Because I'm speaking at this School Leadership Bootcamp. I got an email from somebody I didn't know saying, hey, do this thing. And I'm like, who, what, where, when? And there you go. So thanks for the invitation, too. I'm greatly honored.
Well, actually, it was a personal target of mine last year to start listening to podcasts because it's not something I'd ever done. And so I did a bit of research. And then, of course, because in March, I pitched the event. So I said, okay, as part of my trial out of podcasts, I'm going to go and do some research into leadership podcasts, see what I can learn, see what ideas I can pick up, see if they're talking to anybody interesting that might be useful as a presenter. This is all about just expanding your learning, but also for me, my network's really important. So I think it was my network's network kind of thing. And it's what's going to bring the ideas in. Part of what I like to do is I like to up-level voice. So I like to find people who've got good things to say and say, like, how can we get those ideas out there more? And so, I really liked your podcast, and I really liked your whole approach to leadership, because if we're bringing people in, we have to bring in people who are kind of in sync with our message. And our message for leadership is basically, you can do it. You can do it. You have to believe in yourself. You have to know some structures. You have to have some experience behind you. You have to, but if you want to get into leadership, I say this event is for both existing and aspiring leaders. It's like we need to encourage people into leadership. We need to have leadership conversations. We need to be learning from other leaders. And that's what you're doing. So I was like, that's great. I really like your approach. I see you've got the depth of knowledge, the depth of experience, and you've got something that people will be interested in. So that's why I wrote to you.
Nice. Brilliant. Well, it worked out, and I can't wait to serve and speak. It's really interesting, that idea of like, you can do it, because I just recently conducted a case study with an incredible leader. I actually posted and wrote about her today on Facebook, LinkedIn, sent an email about it too. But this is a leader who was principal of her state of the year, right? Like distinguished principal, and somebody who has achieved so much. And in some ways, to be quite honest, I'm intimidated by her because she's so successful, right? So do you get the context of like how strong of a leader this woman is, right? And when I was talking about like, what's the result? What's one thing that really the mastermind has given you? And she said, it's given me confidence. I'm thinking, what? Confidence? Like you are one of the strongest leaders I know, right? But it's an incredibly lonely, position. And this idea that you can do it, to have a space where folks are encouraging, whether it's something that we put on at BLBS or join in a program, right? Like the School Leadership Boot Camp or the communities that will be connected to that. Leaders just need to get connected to hear that they can do it. And it's sad, but true. Often in systems, they're not hearing that enough from the system level leader, right? Which is I guess why our community thrives. Okay, so that's enough about me, but just a cool connection. Can you dig a little bit deeper, Kirsten? I like this idea of like up leveling communication, because I think that could be really beneficial for the ruckus maker watching and listening to think about how can they up level communication even in their local school.
To me, I think it's all about clarity. And I just make this connection back to what you just said about confidence, because when I do coaching, the coaching that I'm trained in is all about self-activating. So it's all about like getting the person to be in contact with what it is they really want, and to find the self-knowledge and strategies within themselves to move forward. So it's like, for me, unless I'm like specifically consulting with something, I don't ever bring advice. It's all about getting the person to reflect on what they know, what they're capable of, and what they want to happen, and then like articulate the way forward, the next steps. So when I think about communication, actually, you know what I'm thinking about? I'm thinking about, we've got a session on tonight by a guy in Australia called Steve Francis. And it is actually, if we want communication to work, we have to acknowledge that, first of all, we have to have the culture in which it can flourish. Because if we don't have that positive culture, nobody's going to listen anyway.
I
Right.
don't hear it.
So the first thing we need to do always, whenever I go into a new school, when I was leading, the first thing I always did was build relationships, which was find out what was going on with people and connect to them in some way, and then work with them actively to create a good, positive, responsive, communicative culture. Because although I may have very good intentions, particularly when I'm working in a context that's not my context, I have to be very aware of cues people may be picking up that I'm unaware of, things that are important to them that aren't important to me. And all of this has to be part of the bigger picture, or nobody's going to listen to your communication. So in order to get to that clear communication that's important to us, there's a lot of pre-work that needs to be done in developing a positive culture in the organization and ensuring that you have strong relationships.
Great point. Really, for something to reflect on for sure. Like, do you create the environment, the conditions where communication can even flourish? So, thank you, Kirsten. All right, one just personal question I have for you, because you've lived an interesting life. In pre-chat, you're talking about, and your bio says, "Hey, born in Scotland," but you told me by the age of 2, right? You are already abroad, living with your family, and you've kind of been in a lot of places since then. So the personal question is basically, what's one insight that you can share with the ruckus maker watching or listening about that cultural experience, about living around the world, that they could apply and benefit, their leadership? What's that insight, that you've gained? I know there's many, but just one you want to share.
I always say human first, amongst everything, amongst all of our differences, whether it's socio-economical, or whether it's cultural, whether it's experiential, whatever it is, the one thing is we are human first. And I would say, instead of looking for what is different, look for what you have in common, look for where you can make connections, and always understand that you are capable of making that connection if you just pause. If you just pause and just for 1 second, imagine that you are that other person and what they're feeling. It's not all about us. So sometimes I don't even know what's going on, but I know that if I stick my hand out and I smile and I introduce myself and say, hi, I'm Kirsten, and I'd really like to get to know you, or I'd really like to hear what you have to say, people open up, and they open up with such joy, because so many people are not used to being heard. So the minute you say that you want to hear them, they open up. So that's it. We're human first, and all humans want to be heard.
Brilliant. So, Kirsten, if you could put a message on all school marquees for a single day around the world, what would your message be?
That's so hard.
It is hard.
That's one little message.
One little message.
I'm going to steal something from somebody else I know,
Okay.
a educational consultant in the US called Robin, and I'm going to say, let them learn. And I'm going to leave that a little bit open to interpretation, but let them
Sure.
learn would be there in blazing rights.
Beautiful. And now you're building your dream school from the ground up. You're not limited or constrained by any resources. Your only limitation is your ability to imagine. How are you building this dream school? What are your 3 guiding principles?
Can we talk for a day about this?
We could, but just not tonight.
I think we could have a whole massive conversation worldwide about this. It would be so interesting, exciting.
For sure.
Well, I think number one, the guiding principle would be unlimited learning or limitless learning,
Yeah.
so that it is not limited by any curriculum or by any expectations or by any targets that have been controlled by another person, because we don't know what is inside our learners until we explore that. So I would say my first guiding principle would be limitless learning. My second guiding principle would be activate application. So that would be like, whatever we're learning, how are we going to use it? What's the purpose? Like, what's the challenge? What's the thing that we need to actually address? So, and then the third guiding principle would be personalization of perspective, which what that means is like, okay, it is important for people to be literate. It is important for people to be able to, manage their finances, make a plan or whatever. But at the end of the day, I really believe that we're limiting, for example, boys. Okay, boys come into preschool and they're all like building great structures and they're all like into investigating smelly things. And what do? We sit them down, get them to shut up and tell them to read books. That is true. I'm sorry. It's a disaster. It's a disaster.
Sure.
So maybe I'll actually change that personalization of perspective to be something like more like inspire from inside, like it's about, I think we can do so much better if we actually, and that's back to let them learn. It's like, if we actually activate what's inside somebody and let it grow and flourish, I think we're destroying architects. I think we're destroying scientists and turning boys, I mean, not just boys, but boys in particular is what I've seen, into like, I hate school. Yeah. So all of this, and make this learning in the environment, whatever environment you have, get out and embrace it, investigate it, make it real, connect with businesses, get all of that juicy stuff going. The learning has to be real. We're keeping it too boxed in and constrained right now.
We covered a lot of ground today, Kirsten. So of everything we discussed, what's the one thing you want a ruckus maker to remember?
You can do it. Whatever it is that you want to do, you can do it. You have the power, you have the capacities, and you know what the next step is.